Welcome to Confessions Beyond the Food. I'm your host, Nancy Ridlen. Let's dig in and get inspired. Hi, and welcome back to Confessions Beyond the Food. My name is Nancy Ridlen, and today I have a good friend who has joined me. So this is Brett Smith. Welcome.
Thank you.
Where are you in town from?
So I am visiting from Louisville. I used to live here in Dallas, but I do live in Louisville now.
He's a traitor, guys. He left us, but now he's back in God's country. So
It's true.
It is true. So anyways, we're glad to have you here. So one thing that I wanted to do with Confessions Beyond the Food is really expose different sides of the industry and also talk about some of the harder topics that not a lot of people talk about and get to know people for real, and not just what's on the surface. And so I think it's really easy in this day to, whether you're on the operations side, the sales side, you do social in your personal life, it's really easy to make ourselves look really shiny and nothing's wrong. Everything's great. Everything's perfect. I'm so cool.
Killing it.
Loving it. So, but in life, that's just not what life really is. And no matter, whether you, try to walk the straight and narrow all the time. And just life is hard, whichever way you go. And I think especially in food service, we are surrounded by a lot of, people that are suffering from lots of different things, whether it be anxiety, whether it be depression, addiction, performance-based. There's so many different things. And today, I just kind of want to share a little bit about what I suffer with. And I've invited Brett here today to kind of talk through some of, our stories. And in a part 2 of this podcast, you'll get to hear some really good steps to take towards combating this. So I became a believer. I asked Jesus into my heart at the age of 6 years old. And from that day on, I was perfect. I never made any mistakes. My life was super awesome. Now, what's your story? No, just kidding.
Much messier.
Yeah, mine was pretty messy. So, but in all seriousness, I, throughout my younger years, I believed in God. I believed that Jesus was his son and he came to save us. And I knew everything about being saved. I knew about grace, and I felt how much God loved me. And that never left me. And even, when I drifted away from him during college and waiting tables and, being in a, being a college kid, dumb college kid, I still, even though I drifted away from him in the church, I always felt convicted. And, going into my 20s and being out on my own, getting a sales job, being kind of a party girl in Dallas, and also in my job, just being a sales rep, you're constantly, being judged by your performance. And it developed some really, really, really unhealthy habits for me as I grew into my 20s. Thankfully, in my late 20s, I kind of I started getting back into the church and started to surround myself with people that had the same belief systems as I, and that grew, and through my marriage and all those things. But I kind of came to my, as I started having children and going through a ton of infertility issues, I still had that faith that God, was with me, and I had hope. And it was so awesome. And I was super blessed to have twin boys. And And so you're like, okay, that's the end of her story. No. After that, even seeing all of God's miracles in my life, just life happened, and life was hard. And I started a business in the food service industry. And it was very, very stressful because we built everything from the ground up. And I was only as good as my last sale. And I had all these, we had people that were working for us. I was working for all these factories. I've never had as many bosses as I've had in my entire life, between the people that work with me and the people I work for. And it just turned into this constant, like, I've got to have this image of being like, that everything's great. Everything is awesome. We got you. Like, I'm the best salesperson in the world. I'm the best mom. I'm trying to be all the things. And I was sitting in church one day, and they talked about the iceberg, where you can see just the tip of the iceberg, and 92% of it or whatever is beneath. That's the foundation. What's under the water? What's below the sea level? And if I was being really, really honest with myself, it was empty. Building my foundation on really, really shifty sand, and everything was, shifting based on the circumstances and the surroundings around me. Whether, whether I was being successful in my personal life or professional, it was just all based on performance and my surroundings. And it really struck me that there's something missing. And I knew, like, everything that God had instilled in me. But like, I knew it, but I had no heart connection. Like, it was just, I was just dead. I was I led a small group at my church. Like, you would think that I would, not be telling all this, but if I have to really be honest with you, I didn't really, believe God's promises. And as a believer, that seems like really, like, what? You don't believe him? I'm like, I believe him, but I just don't believe that, that he's there. And so I decided, a lot of people talked about, like, recovery, and I thought, man, and people actually asked me to be a leader in it, or a mentor. And I said, well, I've never been through it, and I probably should check that out. But I knew in my heart, like, I needed it. And so I got into recovery. That's where I met Brett. And I really just unveiled, like, God kind of exposed me. It was like, I started right in 2020, like at the beginning of 2020. And so we were all together, and then COVID happened, like, right in the middle of my process, and everything was crumbling around me. I couldn't, we couldn't, my industry, like, our income went down 97%. And we had, like, about 8 people on our team. And there was just all these, I don't know what to do type, I don't know what to do. Like, I can't get out. I can't physically go out and bring in more business, because we're all trapped inside our homes. Like, what's going to happen to the people, the people that work for me? What's going to happen to the business? What's going to happen to my family? All these things are just, I was handicapped. Like, I could not do anything. And then my health went out. I almost died that year. And so it was like, everything around me was kind of crumbling and shattering, and everything that I depended on, that I can work harder, do more, everything was taken away from me. Like, I literally was, trapped in my house and very ill, and I couldn't help. And it drove me crazy. But what it revealed to me is, like, a lot of unhealthy lies that I had started to believe. And so that is where I kind of where I came to the end of myself, and also to discover some of the greatest truths that God has taught me, and revealed to me I suffer from wanting approval from man. And that really plays into like my job, because I mean, I'm always worried about what people think about me, and am I doing enough? Am I enough? And but the truth is that I am enough, because he is enough. And he literally had to knock me down almost. I mean, he had me down, like, right, with like I was down with the whole COVID thing, but then like taking away my health, it was like, all right, God, like I really have to depend on you. And since then, it has been just an incredible, freeing, and I'm not perfect. Like things still happen every day, but it has been so freeing. And Brett was part of this recovery program, and I got to get to know him, and he's part of the ministry leadership, was part of the leadership of the ministry, and so anyways, he had a lot of wisdom, and that program gave me a lot of hope, a lot of tools to get to recover. That's why you go to recovery, right? And so I still suffer from major anxiety, and all the time. This past week, I have not slept at all. I've had a couple of good nights of sleep, but it's a constant challenge. So anyways, I'd love to hear if you could share your story, Brett.
Yeah. And I'm thinking too, like people that maybe don't know you really well, like everything that you just shared, they probably would be in shock. Like she's anxious, she's not sleeping, you know what I mean? Because like we just don't know what's actually going on in people's lives. And so even you talking about how the Lord allowing you like to suffer in that sense with your health, and COVID shuts everything down. Like I look at that similar to what he did in my life as like a severe mercy, where it's severe, it hurts, it's excruciating, but it actually is the mercy of God to allow something to happen in our lives, even hard things, to actually bring us to a better place where doesn't mean circumstantially things get better, but it's better in the sense of we're actually trusting him and depending on him as opposed to depending on ourselves. And so, this recovery ministry that Nancy is referring to is what brought me to the Dallas area. And I'm originally from San Diego, and then Phoenix is where I consider home just because I was out there for so long. I grew up going to church every Sunday. I don't know if I missed 10 Sundays of church in the first 18 years of my life. So went to church, heard the Bible read, and honestly, I just didn't want anything to do with it. I would try to think of other things, snowboarding, paintballing, like while I was in church, to just distract myself, because I genuinely could care less. And I know also growing up that I idolized the work hard, play hard lifestyle. And so essentially, if you would have said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would have said, well, I want to work really hard. I want to make a ton of money. I want to be able to drink, party, just live life doing whatever I want. I want to have nice stuff, nice cars, nice boats, cabin, like in addition to a beautiful home, just all that stuff. And so that's really what was driving me. And yeah, my first job was a busboy in a like golf club restaurant in an elderly community in Arizona. And then I served also for a few years at different restaurants that people would know. Some of them more casual, some of them even more formal. And at least what I experienced was a lot of that like work hard, play hard lifestyle. Like people would show up to work and do a double. They're there 12, 13, 14 hours that day, and dealing with people isn't easy. And so they would get off work, I would get off work, and it was off to the races, drinking, partying, all kinds of stuff. And so for me, thinking of that severe mercy, like I truly believe that God in his love for me, some people are going to hear this and they're going to think this guy is off his rocker, but I truly believe this. I've read the Bible cover to cover multiple times, and I feel that I've got a decent handle on how God tends to operate. And so in his love for me, he allowed alcoholism specifically to bring me to my knees physically, which it did, and also spiritually. And what I mean by that is grew up going to church, had all these opinions about church, wanted nothing to do with church. And then I get out of high school, go to college. I'm doing everything that I wanted to do, work hard, play hard, making a lot of money, drinking as much as I possibly can. All of my friends, guys and girls, drink in the same way. So it seems normal because we all do this. Like I wasn't an outlier. This is what we all do. And even family and friends are doing beyond our group of friends. And yeah, just through my 20s, I mean, it was really just like get through the week, do pretty well, even exceptionally sometimes at work. But then come Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, it was just lights out, off to the races, pretty much a full blown bender every weekend. And it was in my 20s where that started out being a lot of fun. But then eventually it was like less and less fun. It wasn't like an overnight thing. But yeah, eventually there's like getting arrested and a DUI, and relationships are falling apart largely because of the drinking. And it was even in that season of life where I dabbled in 12-step recovery. So going to Alcoholics Anonymous, like, do I have a problem? Do I not have a problem? Can I control this? Can I not? And it was really about 27 years old, 28 years old, somewhere in there, where it just became clear that I could not start drinking and guarantee that I would stop. And so sometimes I could control it, but most of the time when I honestly looked at the evidence of my life, it was clear that I was going to be off to the races, and who knows what was going to happen beyond that. And so I really do look at God using the alcoholism, allowing me to have my fill of what I wanted, which was to party, to drink, to do all these things, to then bring me low so that I started to ask questions that I had never asked before. Like, okay, God, grew up going to church. I've heard the Bible read out loud. At least I had never read it at that time, but I had all these opinions, and like, maybe you're not who I think you are. And so that's really where my journey started, was, okay, maybe my conception of God is not actually who God is. And if I'm going to have all of these opinions, I mean, even to the point of like, I would make fun of Christians in my 20s, like thinking, how could you guys even believe these things? Like, you've got to be out of your mind to believe like the claims of Christianity. And so it just became clear through the humbling of alcoholism that I've got to actually start like doing my own digging to figure out if what I'm spouting off about God, about Christianity, is actually true. And the Lord, I mean, he used an incredibly faithful church in Tempe, Arizona, where I would go Sunday after Sunday. I'm hearing the gospel proclaimed faithfully, clearly. And I started reading the Bible for the first time in my life. And all of these things that I thought about God, the more I read, the more I prayed, the more I studied, just were kind of melting away. Like my prejudices, these false beliefs that weren't even true in the first place. And something I also like to share is that, like, I'm the type of person that is not going to gloss over the hard stuff. And so there's a lot of questions that are very hard, and they're real and they're valid. Like, if the God of the Bible is a God of love, how is there so much pain and suffering? Why did he die? Why did she die? I mean, all of those questions are valid, they're real, and they're hard. And my point is I would ask those questions, and then I would search for the answers. Like, I'm not just going to say, oh, I believe this, but I'm going to kind of sidestep all of the hard stuff and not look into that because I may not like what I find. Like, no, I'm like, if I'm actually going to believe this is not a blind faith. Like, I'm going to do the digging, and my faith is actually going to be based on evidence and reason and logic. because like that's how I think, like an engineering mindset, construction mindset, which is what I've done most of my career now. And so, yeah, that was really where the Lord just allowed hard things to humble me, caused me to go on this search. And then the more I learned about him, the more I went to church, the more I came to believe that, oh, I actually do believe that the Bible, in all of its griminess, difficulty, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that's wild. I truly believe it is the true story of the world. I truly believe that the God of the Bible is the only God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And yeah, it was really in a recovery context in Arizona where I'm coming to faith in Christ. I'm going to church, but I had also immersed myself pretty deeply in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had dabbled years before. And the more I went to AA, and I understand that people love 12-step recovery and they're trying to get sober and they get sober and sobriety is a good thing. And so don't want to take anything away from anyone. But for me personally, like the thought that God is whoever we want God to be, and that if I come up with my own God, like that God just appears, and then someone else comes into a meeting tomorrow and they're like, well, I want my God to be like this, and that God just appears, and everyone's just praying to these gods that they come up with in their head. Like I was just like, I don't think this is true. And that's one of the reasons why, as I leaned more into Christianity, and then I see that God all along has been saying, don't make gods in your own image. Don't worship false gods. I mean, it's been prevalent since Genesis 3. The more I just came to believe that, wow, the story in the Bible is literally telling the true story of the world. And if you just open your eyes in our culture right now, everything that the Bible says has been happening and is happening is still just happening in plain sight. And so those hard things actually became evidence for me that it is true. And so, yeah, eventually got connected with a pastor at a church here in the Dallas area, got involved in a gospel-centered Christian recovery ministry, and then had the opportunity to meet Nancy and her husband. And yeah, we've got a lot of close friends too, like just the way the Lord has interwoven us, especially because like you lock arms with people in the trenches. You're going through hard things. You're talking through hard things. We're still going through hard things. We're praying through hard things, even before this podcast, not recorded. We're dealing with real stuff that is still unfolding. And so, at the same time, and we'll talk more about this in the next podcast, like Nancy was saying, we actually have hope. Like there are things that we can do practically to work out our faith, work out our salvation with fear and trembling. And so, yes, our faith in Jesus for salvation, it's good news, but it's not just this high level, okay, we've trusted in Jesus, we're saved, but like, what now? What do we do if I live another 30, 40, 50 years until heaven? Like life is still really hard. It's really messy. I'm still struggling in so many different ways. Like, what do we do? And that's where both of us, were not only blown away, but just relieved to find out that the gospel, yes, is good news, high level, but it is also very practical on the ground. There are things that we can do one day at a time, even in the midst of difficulty, to have hope. And whether it's drunkenness, addiction, like I struggled with, or what Nancy was talking about, this desire for approval from others and the anxiety that even comes alongside with that. I've had gnarly anxiety. I got sober almost 12 years ago. I've been following Jesus for about 11 years. And my anxiety sober has made the anxiety that I had back when I was drinking and not a Christian look like a cakewalk. Like I've gone through stuff, been in mental health hospitals, checking myself in just to like proactively like, hey, I don't want to live anymore. I don't want to hurt myself though. So like I would check myself in somewhere just to be like, I don't want to get to that place. So here's like a way to protect myself from myself possibly going somewhere that I don't want to go. And so, yeah, I just say that to say that life is hard. It's messy, but it's not without hope. And yeah, that common hope is what has brought Nancy and I together as friends. And again, her husband, yeah, I got to walk with him through our recovery ministry. It's a program called Steps that we use for discipleship. And yeah, just so many different ways the Lord has blessed this connection, and it's been really sweet.
It's been really sweet. I just love your story, Brett. I can never tire of hearing it. So it's just so encouraging and so raw and real and honest. And I think that I loved how you went through, you had to get through the evidence, and see it. And I know that I can look back in my life and I know in the thick of it, I can see now where God was taking me to this path. Like in the thick of it, I was like, why am I having to go through this? This is so freaking hard. And it's not necessarily like, oh, poof, that went away. But I can see how he carried me through really, really hard situations, and how and just just how good he is, and how our stories, can help other people and in their lives. And so yeah, I honestly, when I came to when I came into the program, I really hadn't even identified myself as being anxious. And I really didn't until after. It was like a year after, and my anxiety just kind of like manifested into where, that happened afterwards. And, I had to get on medicine and all the things. And just like, I had to figure out, what was I afraid of? And, just there's, which we can talk about later, but there's, all types of fears and things like that. But again, I feel like it's never a cakewalk. I feel like I don't know if you guys, I know Brett has, but a couple times, but read the book Job, but I'm like, hey God, when am I going to get out of Job, please? And so, I've had moments where I have like not wanted to hurt myself, but I've definitely wanted to, like, I'm ready to go to heaven. And so, I'm just tired of this. This life is exhausting. And without like this hope, I don't, I think I'd be a pretty miserable person.
I couldn't even imagine life without the hope of the gospel. Like, I literally think about what I would do, and I cannot even imagine it.
Me either.
Yeah.
I sit at a pain level of, right now I'm like actually at a 3, which is nice. But my pain level, I live pretty much in pain all the time. And it's really, it's hard. And there's never a day that I don't forget that I'm not 20, what we were talking about. I'm not 22 anymore. I'm not super healthy. And I still have all these responsibilities, and, but God, and that is all I can say is, but God. There's nothing I can, there's nothing on this earth. There's no circumstance. There's no dollar amount that was going to fix me. And what doctors or anything. It has just been this hope. And so I'm really excited that we got to kind of talk through, and for me to to share my real story. And there's a lot more, I promise you. And I'm definitely not perfect, and I'm a constant work in progress. And God is like refining me every day. And so it's definitely a journey that I'm still on. And I'm just thankful that Brett was here to join us. And I really encourage you to listen to part 2, because he's going to tell you, we're going to walk through some of the steps that you can take to go through this and to find the hope that we're talking about. But on a little lighter note to end, I'd like to get a confession, because that's, confessions beyond the food. So Brett, what's your confession for today?
Yeah, so I mentioned that I have worked in restaurants, probably in all, at least 3, 4, 5 years coming out of college. For the most part, the last 20 years has been heavy civil construction, so estimating, engineering, project management, stuff like that. In another life, I would want to be a barber, because I love going to the barber. Like, if a woman is like mani pedi, the barber is mine. Like, I would go if it was not financially irresponsible every single week because I love just getting cleaned up. I love the detail, and I'm very detail oriented, like even perfectionistic in some ways, or trying to be. And yeah, I just feel like in no way of downplaying OCD, because I know that OCD is a struggle for sure. I have OCD tendencies. That said, not downplaying it. I just want to go OCD on someone's hair and just like fade it out perfectly. I just feel like there's a skill set that's hidden in there, but we've only got so much time. So
So what would be if you were to sit down at your barber today? Hey, we have one in the building, by the way.
Okay.
It's kind of
I might need to get a little tune up.
Yeah. So what would you ask for?
Yeah. So typically I go in and I want like skin and then fading like into half, one, eventually two. And then usually this is an 8 on top. But for me, and I tell my barber every time I see him, like, don't let any of the fuzzies on the neck live, get them all, take them all down. And so, yeah, it's me just like the thorough, it just feels good. I feel clean. Yeah, feel confident. And so in another life, I would like to, yeah, make people feel that way because I feel like I could dial it in and give them exactly what they're looking for.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You should take a class. I think if I was in another life, or what I'd like to be in heaven, would be a backup dancer.
For the glory of God.
For the glory of God.
Yeah.
And that's a thing. I think that would be a thing.
Yeah. I mean, King David danced for him in technically Jewish culture. What was his underwear as the Ark of the Covenant was coming back into, I believe, Jerusalem. So we absolutely can dance hard. He was dancing hard and he was commended.
Yeah. And this is coming from a Baptist, y'all. Growing up Baptist, but
I'm Baptist-costal.
But yeah, so I mean, I seriously, like, I would love to be a backup dancer to whatever songs are going on. And I mean, I hope they're hip hop Christian songs.
Hey,
so
there's some legitimate, incredibly good Christian hip hop. For real. I made a playlist. I actually sent it to friends. They're like, there's no way there's good Christian hip hop. I said, well, now listen to this. I put a Spotify playlist together and I blow their minds.
That's awesome. We might have to include that in the link.
Yeah.
So, but awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. And thank you so much, Brett. And you're such a light on my life and on so many others. So check us out. Thank you so much. Share this, like this. And we look forward to seeing you and you hearing us, however it goes. But next time on part 2. Have a great day. For more inspiration, follow our social media at W3Sales. Please like, comment, and subscribe. You know, all the things. We would love to connect with you.